So next topic is functions and subroutines. So we have seen about the various applications where functions are being used, but now we will see another aspect of it. It is subroutine, and we will compare and distinguish the operations and domain and range of both these functions and subroutines. Okay. So the first thing is, let's say I want to add two numbers and print the result. That's my aim. So I'll use both functions and subroutines to perform this operation, and we'll identify the difference between those two structures. Okay. So the first thing is function. Yeah. Okay. So adding two numbers using a function. Let's say I'm taking addition 1 . That is a program for adding two numbers using a function. So if this is a built-in function, change it to this. So if that is a built-in function, rename it to a different name. Program name is addition underscore. So the same thing can be written using a subroutine. sum a comma b comma c. Use a different name for this also. Okay, so now we have to see the observations. So here the first thing, subroutine stops the main program completely and calls the subprogram. So we have to stop the main program and call the subprogram. Entire main program process will be stopped and control goes to subroutine. Whereas function call will be in line with the main program. Function can be used anywhere in the program. So within the process, within the line itself, a function can be called. The first observation is function works in line with the main program. Whereas subroutine stops the main program and goes to the subprogram. Next one, both function and subroutine takes the input by reference. So first variable will be passed on to first location, second variable will be passed on to second location. So both function and subroutine takes input by reference. And for function, only one variable can be written by name. Function returns only one variable by its name. Function returns only one variable by its name, whereas subroutine returns any number of variables by reference. So here you can send one more variable also to the main program. Let's say difference of those two. You can add one more variable. So it will be passed by reference. So next observation is, so here the name of the function should be defined as a variable in the main program. Whereas a subroutine name has no significance. So here the output is passed on to the main program through its name of the function. So it should be defined as a variable. Whereas subroutine name has no significance. All the output variables will be passed by reference. So name of the subroutine has no significance in the story. Right. So here you can remove all these input variables, a equal to 1, b equal to 2, all these things, and keep an empty bracket here and define your input variables here. Let's say p is equal to 1 and q equal to 1 can be done here within the function. So then what happens? Without any inputs, this function will perform. Without any inputs, all inputs will be taken within the function. In the main program, the function takes no input. So if you just remove this and remove these definitions, remove these variables and keep an empty bracket and define p and q within the function. So then also it works. So here also the same thing can be possible, like without any inputs or outputs. So here you are defining two variables a and b, and you are using four variables in the subroutine call. So what happens? Whatever variables defined will be considered as input variables, and the variables that are not defined will be considered as output variables. So it won't show any error till it reaches the subprogram. So in the subprogram, if you did not define any variables, then it will give some random number or it will give an error. So that part we'll see. So both function and subroutine can be run without any input variables. Input or output variables. So if you print your output variable within the subroutine itself, then you don't need to send anything back to main program. You can keep empty bracket here. Right? So both function and subroutine can function without any arguments, without any input or output variables. And so if not defined in the main program, the additional variables in the subroutine will be considered as output variables. So here we are considering 4 variables in the subroutine, but we have defined only 2 variables in the main program. So other 2 will be considered as output variables. Okay, so if not defined, in the main program, the additional variables in the subroutine will be considered as output variables. Not defined in the main program, the additional variables in the subroutine will be considered as output variables. Let's say by any chance we are not defining this in the subroutine. Check what happens. Let's say if you are not taking any input variables and if you are not assigning any value to the output variable, someone, here you will get an error, because the name of the function is the output variable, and if you do not assign any value to it, it shows an error. Check here what happens. So here PQ are input variables, RS are output variables. Don't assign any value to R and S. See whether it gives an error. Whereas function gives an error. What is that? Function name should be assigned with a value within the function to send back to main program. Otherwise, program shows an error. otherwise compilation error occurs. So function name itself is the output variable. Function name ante enti output variable. So output variable must be assigned with some value in the function program, otherwise it shows an error. Whereas in subroutine, already if variables are not defined in the main program, they will be considered as output variables. And if you don't assign any value in the subroutine, it takes a random number. So if no value is assigned in main program, and no value is assigned in subroutine, random numbers will be generated. No error will be shown. Random numbers will be sent back to main program. So this might be probably because of this, because here we are defining them already. So the random numbers will be assigned from main program itself. Subroutine has no significance. So it will not send anything. Random numbers will be assigned in the main program. So because they are already defined as variables in the main program. So this subroutine has more flexibility as well as more prone to errors. Because even if we don't assign anything, or if we miss and give some unknown variable here, it shows, it doesn't show any error. Whereas a function returns only one variable, one value, so that is also by its name. So it will stop and ask if you do not define any, or if you do not assign any value to the name of the function. These are the main differences between functions and subroutines.